Welcome everybody to Metaliteracy for Elderly Digital Citizens. So a lot of you already know me as Valibrarian. I'm Dr. Valerie Hill. I'm one of the coordinators of the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium, and I'm also the director of the Community Virtual Library. I'll put our website in the local chat. I hope today that you'll walk away from this wonderful conference with an understanding of how metaliteracy and communication in digital culture, since most content is now born digital, impacts the health of the elderly in many ways. Their mental health, physical health, and emotional health. My book on metamodernism digs into this and presents research on the need for the adoption of metaliteracy and digital citizenship for all ages, including senior citizens, which are usually those thought of as over the age of 65. Through looking at our current philosophical moment, which many people are beginning to call metamodernism, that's not set in stone, we shall see. Let's talk about the impact of the internet and digital devices on seniors. Now, you all know that the baby boomers, that generation, are now becoming senior citizens. And many of the greatest generations, such as my parents and all the World War II veterans, they're no longer with us. My dad passed away in 2021. Many of those World War II veterans are now gone. But I personally work with a lot of senior citizens in my physical world library, and I witness personally every day the impact of the internet and digital culture on their lives. For example, there's an elderly Russian gentleman who lives in my retirement apartment complex, and I've helped him learn to write in English using translation tools. He's an amazing, brilliant man. He was born in 1925. He was a master ship architect and an engineer, and then he moved to the United States about 25 years ago. Since then, he's learned much English, but of course he still prefers conversation and writing in Russian. There are many brilliant elderly people who have seen incredible change as the internet revolutionized communication, and they are challenged to change their modes of communication and literacy. Now, this generation of traditionalists learn in a different way. They learned in a linear way through the mastery of skills. You learn one skill, it builds, you learn the next skill, and you master it. That is so 20th century. We do not learn that way anymore. In the information age, adaptability and flexibility are more critical skills than mastery. New applications, new operating systems, and constant changes, that's the norm of our daily life. This frustrates a lot of the seniors that I work with. So what is the trouble with tech? Too many options. I help people with sometimes old, out-of-date, hand-me-down phones that their family members have given them. Oh, let's give grandma this old iPhone that we don't need anymore. Oh, it's such a struggle. I often help them with e-readers for those who cannot any longer read small print. I have one woman who comes and knocks on my door. She's 100 years old. She brings me her Kindle to download her audiobooks because she is legally blind. I am in awe of this woman. She is amazing. She walks around in her beautiful handmade clothes, brings her Kindle to me. She wants to read. All of these elderly individuals have different devices, and they all have different needs. And sometimes it's a struggle to figure out their device. It's some strange phone that has a completely different operating system. I sometimes get calls about phishing scams, or I get notes slid under my door about helping with an old printer that won't connect. And some of them want to learn how to use Zoom, or they want to learn texting. So many different options. So many different devices and different kinds of questions. It's really a lot like Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. only it's on steroids. Look up Vygotsky later if you're not an educator that's familiar of his zone of proximal development. It's about learning not just from a teacher, but also from your peers or a go-to person, someone who knows a little more about it than you do. Now, none of us can keep up. It's impossible with all the technology changes happening today. So really, we all need a personal network or a go-to person to ask for help. That's really the whole reason we started the Virtual Worlds Education Consortium. Help. That's what we need. And the biggest help question I get is this blank look of, oh dear, I don't remember my password. Senior citizens in my mom's generation, they didn't grow up with passwords. And seniors struggle because so much information, as I mentioned earlier, is now born digital. It was never written down. It was born in a digital format. And they grew up in a world of print, in a world of fixed media, not media that's constantly changing. And when they make a phone call, you know what? They're often told on the other line, go to www whatever, and you can access our information online. Go to our website. But unfortunately, many of these senior citizens I work with don't know how to do that, or they have no access, and they really hate feeling dumb because they don't understand all the terminology that is constantly flooding them. Wi-Fi, downloads, Bluetooth, apps, streaming, AI, on and on and on. My mom is 91. She has no internet. She doesn't have a computer, although she does have a smartphone, and she uses it to see her great-grandchildren and keep up with them on Facebook, which shows us we all have digital culture information needs. Yes, someone say that's exactly how, Awfully Pretty Storm saying, that's exactly how I feel when I get in someone's Twitch chat. Yes, we all face help. All these things are changing, hardware issues, software issues, it's all changing all the time. But believe me, there are many seniors out there that lack confidence with their technology, and it's an uncomfortable feeling when they grew up being able to master things, and they were brilliant, intelligent people throughout their lives. Many of them have had fascinating careers and accomplishments, yet they feel the world has sort of left them behind. In an article in Sociology 2021, this article is about the attitudes toward tech among elderly people over age 80. The researchers found that although willing to learn to use digital technologies that others in their networks routinely employ, older people often find their attempts stifled, either by internalized negative stereotypes about older users, which is ageism, or by technologies that seem built for others. So this is an attitude problem. These attitudes, and we all have attitudes, they can impact the physical, emotional, and mental health of individuals. So let's think about that for the elderly. Telehealth and social outreach. There's a couple topics that certainly impact us all today. And think about during the pandemic when these elderly people could not actually get to their doctor and had to do the virtual doctor visits. Telemedicine and virtual visits were great and a lifesaver. But this idea, just go online to visit your doc. I have many elderly people that come to my library, that knock on my door, that get in touch with me, that need help with their virtual doctor visits. They don't know how to do that. And those who have no family members nearby to help them, they often feel vulnerable. Many need help accessing my chart. My mom can't access her my chart. They have difficulty with their financial documents that are moving more and more online. One elderly friend is frustrated by her bank. Her bank informed her that she must go online or come into the bank in person because they no longer will send print statements, nor can they easily be reached by phone. When you call that bank, it tells you to go to www. our bank. And those who use the internet, oh yes, they can do some research. They can Google their health concerns. Now there's a good option. But how many of you have been shocked by the amount of information online on particular health topics that are not written by anyone in the medical field? It can really be frightening, some of the advice, the tips that look very professional, but they're misleading. Now, I mentioned, of course, during the COVID pandemic, Zoom and other social platforms were a huge help with socialization for the elderly they spent so much time in isolation. How many of you here felt this way? You found that Second Life was a wonderful place to be, to meet when the world was shut down. I didn't lack my friends because so many of you I could meet, even though we were told not to go outside. Helping the elderly learn Zoom or FaceTime, Skype, many of the other communication tools, it has been rewarding to help the elderly, especially when they were isolated. I believe many seniors would find virtual worlds a great place for socialization, but most of the ones that I help, they do not have a computer that could possibly support Second Life. Information access is still a huge problem. Now let's talk about social robots. Probably a lot of you are familiar with this, and you're probably aware of the rise in social robots as caregivers for the elderly. Particularly, they've already done some of this in Japan. A current research article by Cooper and Ross talks about this. It's called Towards the Deployment of a Social Robot at an Elderly Daycare Facility. The research was conducted at a senior center where robots helped with physical exercises. The researchers believe the robots could be programmed to interact more personally to engage the seniors. Now, as I was reading this, I was very much thinking about Sherry Turkle, who I have followed for years. Sherry Turkle was a great proponent of all the wonders of the internet and how we were all connected. But as the years went by, she's become much more cautious. She's done a lot of research on social robots. Will we prefer them to humans? She strongly advocates for not using robots as friends or pets for children. Because robots always give us their full attention. They reply with what we desire, what we want to hear. They're the perfect friendly companion. Pets can be messy. They can be smelly. And real live friends, they sometimes argue with us. But your social robot never argues. Oh, the pros and cons of social robots. And you can think of this topic later. There's also the whole AI friend on Snapchat. Very similar problem. Which leads me to the fact that there's a dark side of digital culture. Sure, there's a lot of wonderful tools at our fingertips that keep us from being isolated, but there are also a lot of concerns. And whenever I teach metaliteracy to younger people, I go into some of these concerns and take them into a black, dark room so they can contemplate their personal dashboards, their fear of missing something, FOMO, the edited life where they're so busy taking selfies, they forget to live in the moment, cybersecurity, all those concerns. But for the elderly, think for a minute. They're impacted by both the advantages and the disadvantages of digital culture. They're impacted by the death of privacy, information overload, the need to understand cybersecurity, all of these concerns that face us all. And certainly anxiety about these issues can lead to difficulty with our health. Helping seniors understand the need, all of these needs, in a gentle and an unalarming way, that's become my goal as a hopeful and optimistic person. And one of these concerns that impacts the elderly and all of us is confirmation bias. This is just a fact of human nature. We like to be around our people, our group that thinks and believes like we do. We're all victims of confirmation bias as human beings. But in digital culture, it becomes a problem, especially with social media, because this can shut out learning when we only follow people online who share our own views. Family member arguments can happen. Blocking people who don't agree with us. Have any of you witnessed this? And I've witnessed it with the elderly. My mom, age 91, ended a friendship of over 70 years due to nonsense and trivial things she saw on social media. I was shocked. This is an unhealthy side of the endless scroll on our digital devices. And another concern for the elderly, and for all of us really, is digital legacy. The future of our photos and the assets that we create that are born digital, it's uncertain. Remember when you were a child and you found an old photograph album, perhaps of your great-grandparents? Will children in the future ever find that? Not unless people understand digital legacy and know where to put and organize those digital photos. The future of photos and assets, that's uncertain, and older people today often have physical objects they want to hand down as heirlooms to their family members. But as more and more of our lives become virtual, what happens to the content that we create? Digital legacy it's a rising industry. And in a few minutes, we're going to head over to the community virtual library where we have an information exhibit that shares about many of these issues that I'm raising in this talk for all ages, the elderly, even infants. We're all impacted by digital culture. Now, the old faded photo albums of the past that our great-great-grandparents had may not exist in the future. Thinking about how we're moving quickly into virtual and digital environments, how many of you agree this impacts the health of the elderly? Digital archival it's an important concept on a global, a national, and a personal level. Helping the elderly understand what this means for the future, it helps us all. It helps us respect the legacy of our past, our cultural heritage, and our elders. And now, what's the buzzword of 2023? Artificial intelligence. It's exploding all around us. How will this impact the elderly? I had an elderly man just this week come up and ask me, "What's this AI I'm hearing all about on the news? Have you tried it?" And I said, "Yes, I've tried it. A lot of you sitting right here, you avatars, you've tried it. I know you've all tried to write something on ChatGPT." A few of the elderly people have asked about what this is. They hear about it on the news. Legislation is being discussed. The concepts of social robots and embodied AI, both will impact us as we age. A skill that's gaining online popularity is hashtag prompt engineering. And I'm sure you've all tried engineering a prompt, or if you haven't, you've probably talked with someone who has. And it is an important skill because you have to know how to engage with AI. And of course, the first person I ever heard the term prompt engineering from was someone we all know and love, Thinker Selby Evans, who is a senior citizen. Think about that. Here's a pioneer who is older than I am leading the way. So the elderly are certainly not dumb or are they unwilling to change. Some of them are ahead of the curve. So type a Y if you've tried an AI generator app. Let's just see how many of you have sort of tried it. Okay, great. I'm seeing some eyes out there. And you can see on this slide the rise in the popularity of AI, which is exploding. So why am I using this word metaliteracy? Why do we need more words, more words, more words? Don't we have enough? Well, I use the term metaliteracy to point out this gigantic change. Literacy was reading and writing For thousands of years, particularly during the Gutenberg parentheses, all of the tech concerns which impact the elderly in many ways fall under metaliteracy, which is simply another word for literacy in digital culture. And that's where we live. When those age 80 look back at literacy in their lives, well, they would define it as reading and writing. But now literacy means texting, chat rooms, YouTube, MyChart, online search engines, artificial intelligence, and constant upgrades and apps. Just when you figure out a certain application, oh, upgrade 7.6 is out. Have you tried it? And those applications sometimes change without you even knowing it. Seniors say, why does my phone look different? Everything's in a different place. It drives them crazy. It's impossible for anyone to keep up. Literacy has changed for us all. That's right, Shiloh. Updates have bugs, and there's constantly changing the bugs, making it better. But that means constant flexibility and adaptability in our brains. It's not easy. So elderly digital citizens need to know what it is to be a digital citizen. We all are, like it or not. And I like this wheel that comes from the DQ Institute. Senior citizens may not really need to know everything about online digital culture. None of us can know everything. But an awareness of digital citizenship is critical. I'm trying to teach it to my 6-year-old grandson because you know what? He's personally responsible. Nobody can protect him. Nobody can protect any of us. We all are responsible for this ourselves. So the DQ Institute shares this wheel to illustrate the many concepts of life online, which have impacted literacy. A digital citizen has, as I said, a personal responsibility for this. And my goal, and perhaps all of you sitting here, perhaps yours too, is to help people understand this need. From infancy through age 100, we are all both physical and digital citizens of our changing world, or should I say, worlds. Now, it's not easy, as I said. It requires a balancing act from physical to virtual. Often when I share talks about metaliteracy and digital citizenship, I hear people who have a lot of concerns. Some of them are actually frightened about where the world is headed. Some are frightened now when they hear about AI and how it's exploding around us and changing many jobs. I strive to remain hopeful and unafraid. Literacy, health literacy, and really all types of literacy. It's a balancing act as we glide through websites, databases, books, e-journals, social media, videos, podcasts, virtual environments across the metaverse, and millions of evolving apps to infinity. So we have to take a deep breath and remember to reach out to each other as human beings. Humans can help each other not to feel lost in the online sea of information chaos. Now, an AI chatbot, it may seem empathetic. You heard about the AI friends on Snapchat. Oh, they're so friendly and cheery. But is that real? I think not. I need to know that there is a real person behind you avatars sitting here, and I know many of you. I know many of you as real as any person I've met in the physical world throughout my career. Learning environments have changed, and many elderly people learned in a similar situation to the photo up at the top left of the screen. It shows an old traditional classroom, typical of the learning environments elderly people experienced in their youth. Type a Y if you remember rows of desks and the smell of chalk on a chalkboard. Yes, 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 such a different world. Learning in the information age, we now have virtual reality, augmented reality, virtual worlds, XR. Extended reality, it provides new modes of communication and literacy. Classrooms have changed since the turn of the century with interactive whiteboards, our augmented reality apps on tablets. But we need to understand how to use them wisely. Not just, oh, cool, I just made a Hollywood production puppet show and it took 30 seconds and it robbed that child of his imagination, to tell you the truth. It's not about the cool, slick apps. We need to think about purposeful, intentional use of technology. That's the key to our future. And our future is in a new philosophical age that is upon us. Postmodernism has ended, most people believe, and nobody knows what to call it. I'm calling it metamodernism, and many researchers are using that term, but we'll see. Some people call it hypermodernism. Some people are calling it postmodernism, which sounds a bit redundant to me, but we'll see what it is. The bottom line is we know, and we can feel it, the world has changed. We've entered the future with our current philosophical moment and era. Helping our older population adapt to a quickly changing world by providing them with respect and kindness is important. Providing hope helps with our physical, our mental, and our emotional health. So this conference, the Healthy Aging Conference, is a fine example of embracing innovative technology right here in the metaverse for learning in purposeful ways to promote critical thinking. I mentioned earlier, and I believe it is critical, that none of us can keep up with all the technological changes happening today. So each one of us, we all need a personal network or a go-to person to ask for help. And here in Second Life, we have many networks to collaborate with to help us learn. I have a few references here. I've worked a lot with Tom Mackey, who Mackey and Jacobson coined the term, the phrase metaliteracy, and he wrote the foreword to my book. I really think we need to really think about our thinking. That's called metacognition, and think about our literacy, metaliteracy, and think about choosing where we are in digital culture, whether we're in the physical world or in the metaverse. Meta. There's a lot of it. So if you have any questions for me, I'll open to a few questions. We have time, I believe, before we move over to the community virtual library, where we will all gather. P. Ilios has built a little discussion room for us to sit and contemplate this with some additional resources. I did put the link to some more information about metamodernism in the local chat.